Business is still on my mind 2 days later. As Paige and pull into a gravel lot, somewhere on the outskirts of Lafayette. I pull the parking brake and kill the engine, and then we're just sitting in my van, staring at a 2-story brick box of a building that's about as boring as they come. But if appearances were all that mattered, then Paige and I wouldn't have left town at 7 in the morning and driven more than an hour to be here right now. And if appearances were all that mattered, then I wouldn't be nervously sweating, just sitting in the parking lot. Live Mike Studios, says the yellowed sign above the door. I think it's watching me. You sure we can't just record in Dougie's garage? I asked Paige, who had spent the better part of our trip snoozing in the passenger seat. Shoots me this look with a capital L. It says, without words, stop being a coward. And also, if you were going to wimp out, you should have done it before I had to wake up at the ass crack of dawn. I'm serious, I say. I can borrow some sound equipment from the AV nerds. We churn this out in an afternoon and...
Where's this coming from?
Paige asks. She produces a compact mirror from somewhere and uses it to unrumple her post-nap hair. I chew at the inside of my cheek. It's coming from my bank account. Over the last 2 days, I'd scrounged together every penny I could find. And once all the sofa cushions had been overturned and every payphone coin return in town had been raided, I'd put together a grand total of $184.39. When Paige and I had left Hawkins earlier this morning, I'd had all this tentative conviction bubbling inside of me, a hope that maybe that would be enough to cover whatever price quote was about to get dropped on my head. But now that we're sitting outside the studio, reality is kind of starting to crush me. There's no way I have enough cash, right? There's no way.
If you're nervous,
Paige says, picking up the slack while I just sit like a catatonic lump and stare out the windshield.
don't be. The manager of this place can't be worse than the guys I have to deal with in LA. Just let me do the talking. I'll get us a good slot, and a good rate too.
I glance over at her at that last comment. She's still studying her reflection in the compact mirror, avoiding eye contact so steadily in a way that has to be on purpose.
We're already here. Do you honestly want to turn around and leave now?
It's a dare. She's daring me to stick around, to take the next step. And so, I do what I do best. I roll the dice. The van's hinges groan as I swing the door open and climb down. Coming? I shoot back over my shoulder. Behind me, Paige laughs through a swear, clicking her compact shut and following me into the building. Live Mike Studios should be owned by someone named Mike, but it's a guy called Nate Caputo running the show. He's in his mid-60s, washed-up hippie type, with a full head of gray curls, a fringed jacket, and a permanent scowl. The scowl only deepens as Paige makes introductions. We'd had to schedule this meeting for before his 9 a.m. recording session, and Nate is not a morning person.
Quieter.
He grunts when Paige and I launch into a description of corroded coffin in our demo. But when I lower the volume and try again, he just grumbles
Ugh.
and stalks down the hallway towards the smell of brewing coffee.
I'll handle this.
Paige says. Then she's trotting after Nate, and I'm alone. I don't plan on wandering. I'm just going to hang out, wait for Paige, maybe do a little thumb tweedling. But then I see the door. It's open, just a crack, just far enough for me to peer through, and inside, the drum kit is the first thing I spot. Then the rugs laid out on top of one another, stacked high on the floor. Then the spindly leg of a microphone stand. And then I'm pushing the door open and stepping into an honest-to-God recording studio for the first time in my life. It's not a big space, but even with all the equipment and the instruments and the scarf-draped lamps, it doesn't feel cramped. My sneakers scuff across the layered carpets with a shushing sound that feels too loud. I realize that the room is completely soundproofed. Wanting to test this, I tap my fingernail against the hi-hat and grin at the raspy chick-chick-chick that follows. It strikes me hard, like right between the eyes, standing here in the middle of this stack of carpets, cushioned air, pushing in on all sides. I'm in a recording studio, a real one. I've only ever seen them in pictures or in movies, glossy photographs plastered across old issues of Rolling Stone, or Grainy making the band snippet on MTV. But this isn't two-dimensional. It's not lo-fi, it's
kind of a shithole.
the words come, staticky and broken, and way too loud. Through the intercom set into the ceiling, overhead, I look up, startled, to find Paige watching me through the observation window. She's standing in the control room, leaning over the audio console. It's dark on her side of the glass, but the warm light from the studio illuminates her face, making her skin glow like she's got the sun burning somewhere inside. Huh? I say, and then realize that with all the soundproofing, she can't hear me unless, I'm talking into the mic. I lean closer and try again. Yeah. It's the best I can manage without admitting the fact that inside I'm completely freaking out. This place might be a shithole, sure. It could be Abbey Road, and I'd be having the same reaction. I'm standing in a recording studio like a real honest-to-God rock star. Did Munson Jr. ever think he'd end up here? She cups her hands over her ears, making big eye contact with me through the window. Huh? I say, remembering to speak into the mic this time. Paige gestures and covers her ears again. And finally, I think to look where she's pointing. Oh, there's a set of oversized headphones hanging off the corner of one of the amps. I hook them up with my fingers and slide them over my head. How's my hair? I ask, grinning over the mic. Paige rolls her eyes, but her heart's not in it. I can see the smile she's fighting.
Luscious.
What did Nate say?
He's like catatonic. I'm not even going to try until he's chugged at least 1 cup of coffee.
She cocks her head, nodding towards something behind me.
You see that guitar over there?
I'd spotted it as soon as I'd walked inside. A Strat dangling from a mount on the wall. It's a little worn. A few scratches etch the body, and threads on the strap are starting to fray. This baby's seen some wars. But then I sling the guitar around my neck, plug it in, and play a chord. The sound that emerges is pure and clear and perfectly in tune. What do you think? I ask, striking a pose.
Looks good.
Paige says, even for a shithole?
I wasn't talking about the studio.
She cocks her head, studying me through the glass.
You look good. In there, behind the mic, with a guitar. You fit.
I'm not sure I can answer that right away. Not without my voice cracking. So I turn my attention back to the guitar, walking my fingers up the fretboard as I pick out a bare-bones take on the intro to Number of the Beast.
Can I ask you something?
Her voice is low, but unmissable, hazing out of the headphones and into my ears until it's everywhere. I miss a note. Shoot, I say, and whether I'm swearing in reaction to my screw-up or inviting her to go ahead, I'll leave up to Paige.
Why music?
It's such an oblique question that I have to give up on Iron Maiden for a full 30 seconds as I try to figure out what she means. Everyone likes music.
Not everyone likes it the way you do.
She cocks her head, and her short hair sways sideways in a dark ripple.
Fine, okay. Rephrase. Why this music?
I hit a power chord and let it reverberate, filling every corner of the recording studio. Because it's badass, I shout over the noise.
For sure.
She says, once the last echoes have died away.
But that's not the only reason, right?
When I just stare blankly at her, she huffs a sigh.
Help me out here, Eddie. If I'm gonna sell this package, I need some copy to write on the side.
Why music? Why this music? I flip my pick around in my fingers as I try to put my thoughts in some kind of order. Because, weirdly enough, I've never actually asked myself this question before. For 18 years, music has just kind of been. Like eating, breathing, taking a piss. Music. Listening to it, playing it, talking about it. It's fact of life. But why? My mom. I'm not actually sure I mean to say it. It just kind of comes out, murmured into the microphone like I'm in a weird rock and roll flavored confession. I can imagine the words filling the air in the control room, the same way that Paige's voice is filling my head, delivered direct to my eardrums by the headphones. My dad was the one who taught me how to play guitar, but my mom, I clear my throat. She was living in Memphis when she met my dad. She'd grown up there, 19 years surrounded by music, everywhere she went. Country, bluegrass, rock. But her favorite was blues, like Chicago blues. The hard kind that gets into your bones, you know? Paige is straightened up on the other side of the observation window, pulling out of the light filtering in from the studio. I can't see her face anymore. It's just a silhouette that answers me.
Yeah.
So when she left, when she moved up to Indiana, she took the music with her. It's like a 9-hour drive from Memphis to Hawkins. And she and my dad spent all of that time squeezed into a tiny car with 20 boxes of records. And then when I was born, she started sharing those records with me. I'm still plucking out a tune on this beat-up old Strat, but it's not Iron Maiden anymore. It's a Muddy Waters riff, and as it reverberates from the studio speakers, I can hear the static from Mom's record player funding underneath, familiar and comfortable as an old sweater. I still have them. I still listen to them. They're stashed next to the TV. She called them her plane tickets. Even when she was stuck in Hawkins, waiting on her husband to come home from some dumbass scheme.
That music told stories. It helped her see the world.
I didn't get it when I was a kid. I go on. All I heard on those records were people singing about sadness, about how shitty life was, and then she got sick and died. When I was like 6, I got it then. I pause. Typically, there's a chorus of sympathetic crooning following that reveal, one that sets my teeth on edge. But Paige is still and silent inside the control room, watching me, listening. So I give her something to listen to the guitar line from Black Sabbath's Paranoid. Trips off my imagination. But I think I can see the shadow of Paige nodding along the beat. I like this music because it's about sadness and how shitty life is. And things are sad. Life is shitty. It's real. But also it tells stories. This music takes you on an adventure to another world where you're like facing down demons, traveling into the depths of hell. My mom's music was plane tickets. I guess that makes my music portal to another dimension.
You like it 'cause it's badass.
Paige says, I like it because it's really fucking badass. I finish the riff and let my hand fall away. Is that enough copy for you? She leans forward again, into the light, and now I can see the expression on her face. She's not smiling, not really, but there's this glow in her eyes, this soft radiance that has nothing to do with the scarf-draped halogen lamps here in the studio.
I think...
The door behind her swings open, and a moment later, someone hammers the light switch on the wall. All of a sudden, I can see every detail of the control room. Every rogue war that sprouts from the back of the audio panel, every rip in the secondhand sofa oozing stuffing in the corner. And Nate, who is done with his coffee and ready to talk. I watch through the window as he says something to Paige, who nods a response. Should I come in? I ask through the microphone, feeling awkward. Just a second ago, my voice had been filtering through the speakers in that control room for Paige's ears alone, and it had felt like we were the only two people in the world. And Nate, I don't want to be rude to the guy, but he's not exactly gelling with that particular vibe. Paige leans over the microphone just long enough to say,
Hang tight for a second.
then she's turning her attention to Nate and her back to the recording studio. I'm suddenly very aware of the fact that I'm standing smack in the middle of an empty room, holding a guitar that isn't mine, wearing headphones so oversized that they're slipping down over my ears. Oh, God. I poured my heart out to Paige looking like a kid playing dress-up. Feeling extremely childish and even more foolish, I begin the process of putting everything back where I found it, tidying up the toy box. By the time the amps are disconnected, the headphones are replaced, and the Strat is back on the wall, Paige and Nate's conversation is at like a 12 on the intensity scale. He's shaking his head pretty much nonstop, shifting from foot to foot, fidgeting with the scrap of fake leather that's peeling off the sofa. Paige, on the other hand, is planted like a tree. Nate's got at least a foot on her, and still staring him down like he's an ant, and she's a magnifying glass, saying one word to Nate's 10. So I guess it's no surprise that Nate's the one to break first, throwing his hands over his head. He says something I can't hear, but my amateur lip reading tells me it's either fine or fuck. Then he's spinning on his heel and stalking back out into the hallway. Paige sags, just enough to notice, as soon as the door slams shut behind him. A little at loose ends, I tap on the glass to get her attention, and her face is inscrutable when she looks up at me. Well, I mouth. She doesn't mouth anything back, just waves a hand, beckoning me into the control room. Ominous. I hustle out into the hallway. Nate is there, lighting up a cigarette as I beeline for the control room doors.
How'd you end up with that one?
He grunts, nodding in Paige's direction. Won the freaking lottery, man. I don't know. He exhales a stream of smoke just as I pass.
Then how'd she end up with you?
I just power forward, blinking stinging fumes out of my eyes and shoving into the control room.
We can rent the studio.
Paige says, as soon as I'm inside and I can't help the whoop that bubbles out of me, loud in this small space.
They've got a slot in about a week. So if the rest of the band is free...
They're free.
You haven't asked them, Eddie.
They're free. Trust me. She smiles, the first trace of softness dawning through her rictus of impassivity.
I do.
I take a deep breath, bracing myself for the hard question. How much? Paige fiddles with one of the dials on the control board.
60.
60? That's not bad at all.
An hour.
Oh,
With a 5-hour minimum.
which comes to $300. That's way out of my price range. Even if I pick up every shift Bev's got going between now and next Sunday. Can you... My voice cracks. I clear my throat and try again. Can we bargain him down? Paige shakes her head.
That is bargained down.
My stomach turns over. I can't afford that, Paige.
I know.
The news is bad, but Paige is still smiling, soft and a rueful.
Which is why I'm covering it.
Because my brain is busy running in circles, hamster in a wheel style. It takes me a second to process what she just said. You're is about as far as I get before the words run out. She's joking. She's playing a prank on me. There's no way in hell that anyone would ever offer to front 300 for Eddie Munson. No, you're not.
I already paid the deposit.
But why?
Don't ask me that.
She says.
Ask me why music page.
Why music page?
Because things are sad. Life is shitty, and music
is real? She shoulders her bag, looking up at me with the same steadfast tilt to her chin I've just seen her use to reduce Nate to dust.
And when you find real,
she says,
you can't look away.